You landed the big interview and now it's showtime. Uh-oh, what are you gonna do? Well, don't worry, because in this video, I'm gonna share with you how to prepare for the big interview you have tomorrow. Hey everybody, it's Brian from A Life After Layoff, and today I'm really excited to bring you a video that's near and dear to my heart: how to prepare for that big interview, especially if you have one that's coming up very soon, as in tomorrow. So this video is going to help you cram and prepare for that big interview so that you don't mess it up. You can ultimately land that dream offer. But before we get too far into it, if you're interested in more career-related content directly from a corporate recruiter, maybe hit that subscribe button and also hit that notification bell so you don't miss any future content. All right, so the big interview is coming up. You got it on your calendar. You're freaking out a little bit. What should you do? So here's what we want to start with. Number one, we don't want to wing the interview. And I know that you all are great interviewers, but you still need to do your interview prep in order to make sure that you have the best chance of landing that offer. Now, the next thing we want to do to prepare for the interview is to get our logistics down. You should have received an email invite from somebody on the recruitment team who gave you all of the information and details for the interview itself. Now, if you're on an on-site interview, the prep is going to look slightly different than a virtual interview, and we'll break those two down. So if it's a physical location that you're showing up to, figure out where it is prior to, and I would recommend that you put it into Google Maps and look over the course of a few business days, if you have the time to do so, to see traffic patterns and to see how long it's likely going to take you to get there. You can actually look on the street view to see what location you're going to, if there's a parking garage, how far the walk is to the building, and get some of the basic logistics down, because that will alleviate a lot of your concerns, a lot of your jitters. If you know where you're going, there's nothing worse than showing up on your actual interview late or rushing it because you didn't really do the prep to begin with. So cut that part out. That's completely controllable by you, and give yourself the best chance of making that great first impression by being early and being ready to go. And another thing I want to point out here is to triple check the interview time and date. Keep in mind, especially if it's a virtual interview, there is likely going to be multiple time zones, and your interviewers are probably not going to be sitting local to you. So make sure you read the invite very carefully to ensure that you're getting the times correct and you're logging in when you should be logging in. And alternatively, if it's a virtual interview, you want to make sure that you take the time to prepare for that as well. I would recommend that you download the software and do a test run prior to your interview. And I'm saying hours before your interview. You don't want to wait 5 minutes before your interview to try to install the software. And I guarantee this will happen to you. You'll go to hit the join the meeting button, and suddenly it'll say, we need to install an update, and then your computer will do an entire reboot. Then you end up showing up to your interview 15 minutes late and you're frazzled. The interviewer is then going to take a note that you weren't prepared, and it's just not a good look and not a good way to start your interviewing process. Furthermore, you want to make sure that your background is clean and clear. So if you're doing it in a bedroom or in a home office, just make sure that there's not a lot of clutter behind you. It can be used against you as a judgment, and we just want to avoid things that are super easy to avoid. The next thing that I would do is I would get familiar with my interviewers. And if you don't know who your interviewers are, you should send a note to the recruitment team and ask for clarification on who you'll be meeting with. An easy way to do your research on who you're going to be interviewing with is to type their name into LinkedIn and look through the company directory and just get a familiarity of who they are, how long they've been in the company for, a little bit of their history. You're looking for things that can give you insight into what their perspective is going to be. And you're also looking for potential icebreakers. So you might find something in there that you have a mutual interest in, and you can bring it up in the interview, and it alleviates some of that tenseness. And maybe you can develop a rapport with the interviewer a little bit more easily. The next step, and it's a really basic one, and you might be thinking this is a little bit Captain Obvious, but you would be shocked at the number of people who don't do this, and it's researching the company prior to the first interview. And as a recruiter, one of the first questions that I'm going to ask you is, tell me a little bit about your understanding of the company, and then I'll fill in some of the blanks for you. Because in my interviews, that's actually my first interview question for you. I'm looking for an indicator that you've taken the time to do your prep and your research on the company, and that you show a genuine interest. So go onto their corporate website, check out any of their divisions, especially the division that you're likely going to be working in. Head over to their LinkedIn page, see if there's any relevant news that has popped up recently. Maybe check out a few press releases. The idea isn't that you're going to be doing a dissertation on the company, but you should have a base level understanding of the major business groups, maybe some major competitors, and also any recent developments that they've had. Maybe they launched a new product or there's some big market news that they're excited about. And you want to show that you've done enough research that you are engaged in the role and you're excited about the company's prospects. Now, the next thing that you want to do is open up the job description, the job posting, wherever you found it, and read through it very carefully, line by line, and truly understand what it is telling you, because the job description is obviously going to give you a lot of insight into the role and what you would be doing. And so if you walk in the door already having an understanding of the types of activities and tasks that you would be responsible for, you can help prepare your interview answers to make sure that you're addressing some of them. The next thing that you want to do is you want to study your resume very carefully in relation to the job description that you just read. So make sure that you understand your history. And I know this sounds kind of intuitive and say, well, duh, of course I know my history. But you'd be surprised at, especially if you have a lengthy career, at how difficult it can be to scan back through a long career and try to pinpoint some major accomplishments when you're in front of an interviewer and you clam up. So if you can start to pull together your storylines and some major accomplishments as they relate to the position you're interviewing for, it's going to go a long way to increasing your comfort level, especially with your interview prep. And it might even be worth writing down some of the things that are on your resume on a separate piece of paper so that you can fully flush out the ideas and some of the deliverables that you were responsible for. And in particular, pay attention to the results. We talk about that in writing a good resume, but we also want to make sure that we can talk to it, because here's the thing. Anything you put on your resume is fair game in an interview. So if you're somebody that has embellished your resume a little bit, you better be prepared to speak in depth and at length about what's listed on there. And you got to remember, if you're talking to a hiring manager or somebody on the interview panel, it's likely that you're talking to an expert, so you're not going to be able to pull one over on them. And another tip that I personally like to do when I'm heading into an interview is I will go over to Glassdoor and I will search by the job type and then see if there are interview questions, because a lot of times people will actually leave what interview questions they were asked in their reviews. So it can give you a little bit of insight, especially if you can find your specific role or somebody that interviewed for a very similar role and what questions they asked them. And while you're at it, you also want to read through some of those reviews to try to pull out some nuggets of wisdom and potential red flags that you might want to pay attention to. Now, of course, the most obvious step is that we want to practice, practice, practice. And I would suggest making sure that you've got a good understanding of how you would answer common interview questions. And if you need more help on those, I encourage you to check out my playlist for common interview questions and how to answer them, because I give a lot of detailed information there. But the important thing that we want to note is that we want to practice, but we don't want to rehearse, because if you rehearse, you're going to inevitably forget your lines when you're in front of an interview panel. And if you forget your lines and you don't know which page to turn to, so to speak, you're going to end up flubbing it, you're going to clam up, and the entire interview could go off the rails. However, if you're well practiced, you should be able to talk through the different scenarios with a degree of eloquence, because you're going to need to convey a sense of confidence to the interview team that you're capable of doing the job. The next thing that I would do in your interview prep is be very mindful of how you're coming across. Are you displaying confidence? Does your body language suggest that you're comfortable with what you're saying and that you have a strong command on the type of work that you'd be doing? If you're hunched over and your eyes are down, or you're looking off in the other direction all the time, it is going to convey to the interviewer that you're not comfortable, or potentially you might be reaching for answers. And of course, that's not an impression that we want to make. So practice your handshake, practice your tone, practice your eye contact. And I would even recommend go as far as to record yourself. Most everybody has a smartphone these days that has a great camera on it. You can record yourself and see how you would convey to an interviewer on the other side of the screen. And if you feel like you're a little bit shaky in a few areas, that's probably an indicator that you need to go back and practice a little bit more to really smooth that out. So now the interviewer is asking you all these questions, you want to make sure that you understand fully and completely why you want the job and what your value case is. In other words, why are you the best fit for this role, and why are you even interested in this role to begin with? And even if the interviewer doesn't ask you that question, you should be able to answer it yourself. And if you can't answer it and you don't have a compelling reason why you're even sitting in this interview, it may be time to go back to the drawing board and decide, is this the career path that I truly want? Now, the final tip that I'm going to give you as you prepare and cram for your big interview is to make sure that you have a list of questions prepared for your interviewer. We don't want to be a one-way dialogue. You should always be asking the interviewer questions, Not because it's a good practice and interviewers like to know that you're engaged in the interview process by asking questions, but more importantly, you should be assessing the employer as much as they're assessing you. And if you're not, you need to start taking more ownership in your career and selecting the right employers who offer the best opportunity for you as a free agent to move your career forward. So get in the habit of asking really good questions that are going to give you insight into the role and how you might align yourself to be the best possible fit. If you don't know what questions to ask, I made a really robust video about 10 questions to ask your interviewer, and I would highly encourage you to check that out before your big interview. So that's a lot of tips that you can start to implement the day before your interview. This is a lot of cramming. Generally speaking, you probably don't want to get in the habit of cramming for an interview, but this is what I would do prior to my interview to make sure that I'm feeling as comfortable and as prepared as I possibly can. If you feel like you need more help, you're not doing well in interviews, or maybe you're not getting enough interviews at all, that is actually something that I specialize in. I have a website called alifeafterlayoff.com, and it's loaded with tips and tricks for the job seeker to help get you back on your feet again, get you into that job market, ultimately to land that dream job. And I share a bunch of free tips and tricks over there, so go and check that out. I also have some of my deepest and most intimate knowledge in the form of some training courses. The first one is called Resume Rocketfuel, and it is designed to teach you how to write your own resume that is going to give you the best chance of having a recruiter contact you for that first round interview, because that's ultimately the purpose of the resume. You have to write a good resume so that a recruiter is going to pick up a phone and call you. So that, again, Resume Rocketfuel teaches you how to do that. Now, once you get that first round interview, it's up to you to get through the interview stages all the way to that offer. And that's where the Ultimate Job Seeker Bootcamp comes in. Essentially, think of it as interview training. It's a lot more than that, but that's the main gist of it. Now, if you want to bypass the recruiter altogether or try to get recruiters to start contacting you, which is the very best way to get into the interview process, then you want to check out Unlocking LinkedIn, because your LinkedIn game is going to be crucially important, especially for white-collar positions. So if you don't know how to build networks, you don't know how to access hidden job markets, and you don't really know how to use the LinkedIn tool, you're not really getting any interviews from it, check out that course because it will help. Hey, congratulations on that interview. I know this is a lot of information, but you're going to do great. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.